Only true empaths possess this rare spiritual glow. And I must begin by telling you that this glow is not something that can be imitated, purchased, or manufactured. It is not a performance of kindness, nor a costume of sensitivity. It is the radiance of a soul that has been wounded, broken open, and remade in the secret furnace of suffering. To understand this, we must step into the language of the psyche itself, the language of archetypes and symbols, for only through this symbolic language can the mystery of empathy reveal its deeper truth. When I speak of the empath, I do not refer merely to someone who feels a little more than others. I refer to one whose inner structure has been shaped by contact with the shadow, by the necessity of listening to the voices that others would silence, by the endurance of carrying the emotions of the collective as if they were their own. The empath is, in essence, a living bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the pain of humanity and the healing that lies hidden within it. And it is precisely through this bridge work that the glow arises, as if the individual had become illuminated from within by an invisible fire. Consider for a moment the symbol of the glowing figure, which recurs in myths across cultures. We see it in the halo of saints, in the shining countenance of Moses as he descends the mountain, in the radiant body of the Buddha after enlightenment. This glow is never bestowed upon the one who has avoided suffering. It is bestowed upon the one who has descended into darkness and returned. The empath follows this very same path. They absorb what others cannot bear. They carry what others refuse to touch. And in doing so, they burn away the illusion that they are separate from the world. What remains after such burning is a luminous presence, a kind of aura that others feel long before they understand it. But you must not mistake this glow for mere softness. It is not weakness. It is forged like steel in the fire of the unconscious. It is the glow of one who has endured the dismemberment of their naive self, the collapse of their boundaries, and yet has not perished. They have instead emerged with a deeper soul vision, an ability to see through appearances into the hidden currents of another's heart. Their sensitivity is not childish, it is initiatory. It has the power to heal, because it has first survived being shattered. In my work with dreams, I often found that the empathic personality would be haunted by recurring symbols of drowning, of being engulfed by waters, of being pulled into floods. They could not resist. Such images reveal the unconscious truth of the empath. They are drawn again and again into the ocean of collective pain. At first this may seem like a curse, for who wishes to drown perpetually? Yet, if the dreamer can learn to breathe underwater, if they can find in themselves the capacity to hold the flood rather than be annihilated by it, then something extraordinary occurs. They begin to radiate a strength that feels like light itself, because they have become transparent to the waters they once feared. This rare glow is not something an empath seeks to possess. It emerges as the byproduct of their survival. Imagine gold discovered in the dark veins of the earth. No miner created the gold. They merely unearthed what pressure and fire had already made. The empath is that minor, but they mine their own heart. They go into caverns of feeling so deep that others would run from them. And in those caverns, they discover the hidden gold of compassion. When that compassion rises to the surface, it shines through their very presence. And people who encounter them feel as though they are in the company of someone who sees their soul, even when no words are spoken. I tell you this, not to romanticize suffering, but to emphasize that the glow of an empath is inseparable from their shadow. Without having faced betrayal, neglect, abuse, or rejection, no one learns the depth of feeling required to carry the wounds of others. And yet, paradoxically, the empath's glow is not the wound itself, but the light that emerges when the wound has been accepted, when it has been integrated into the wider architecture of the psyche. In this way, empathy is alchemy, the transformation of pain into presence, of suffering into light. Let us dwell for a moment on the archetype of the wounded healer. In Greek myth, Chiron, the centaur, is struck by a poisoned arrow that leaves him with a wound that never heals. And yet from this wound springs his ability to heal others, for he knows their pain intimately. The empath is a modern embodiment of Chiron. Their glow is not a sign that they are untouched, but that they have carried their wound into wisdom. It is the paradoxical light that shines from within the wound itself. You might ask, why only true empaths? Why not all sensitive souls? The answer lies in the distinction between identification and transformation. Many people feel the emotions of others, but they remain entangled, drowning endlessly, without ever discovering the deeper current beneath the waves. The true empath, however, learns often unconsciously at first how to metabolize this flood. They are alchemists of emotion. They do not merely absorb, they transmute, they take in anger and give back understanding. They take in despair and radiate hope. They take in grief and emit a quiet presence that feels like love itself. This is the glow others perceive. Even if they cannot name it, in dreams and visions, I have seen how this glow can be symbolized as a lamp carried through a dark forest. It does not banish the darkness, but it makes the path visible enough for others to walk. The empath does not remove suffering from the world, but they illuminate it in such a way that it becomes bearable. People are drawn to them not because they have all the answers, but because their very being whispers, "You are not alone in this abyss." The danger, of course, is that the empath often does not recognize their glow. They may feel instead that they are cursed to live forever in exhaustion, drained by the needs of others, misunderstood by those who cannot grasp why they suffer so deeply. They may look in the mirror and see only weariness, yet others look at them and see a light they cannot explain. This is the paradox of the empathic glow. It is more visible to others than to the one who carries it. Here lies the spiritual challenge. The empath must learn to see themselves as they truly are, to honor the gift without becoming consumed by it. Otherwise, they risk falling into martyrdom, offering their life force endlessly until nothing remains. The glow is rare precisely because it is not sustainable unless the empath also learns the art of boundaries, of retreat, of renewal. For the lamp must occasionally return to the flame if it is to continue burning. I want you to consider now what it feels like when you are in the presence of such a glow. Perhaps you have known someone who, without speaking, seemed to calm the turbulence in your soul. Perhaps you have sat across from a person who looked at you and you felt, for the first time, truly seen. This experience cannot be fabricated. It is not the product of training in techniques or strategies. It is the presence of a soul that has integrated enough shadow to become a mirror for your own. That mirror is terrifying for some because it reveals what they would rather not see. Yet for others, it is salvation. The empath shines not for themselves, but for those who need the light to awaken to their own journey. This is why I call it spiritual glow. It transcends the personal. It belongs to the archetypal. In each empath burns not only their own story, but also the collective story of humanity's wounds. And in their glow, the collective begins to glimpse its own possibility of healing. The rare glow of the empath cannot be understood merely as sentimentality, for sentimentality is often a disguise, a performance of feeling without the depth of transformation. The true empath's glow has nothing artificial in it, for it is not born of self-conscious display, but of unconscious necessity. It emerges when the soul has been pressed against the archetypal reality of pain and found itself both wounded and awakened. In this way, the glow is not light without darkness. It is light because of darkness. You must understand that the unconscious does not care for appearances. It does not polish its symbols for social approval. It erupts through dream, through image, through sudden feeling that overwhelms reason. The empath is the one whose threshold between conscious and unconscious is thinner, more permeable, and therefore more dangerous. To be permeable is to risk invasion, possession, even annihilation. Yet it is precisely through this permeability that the archetypal radiance of empathy becomes possible. They glow because the unconscious flows through them. They glow because the archetypal field itself breathes through their skin. Let us turn to a dream image. A figure walking through a marketplace, surrounded by countless strangers, each carrying hidden grief. In the dream, this figure begins to glow softly, and without speaking, the grief of the others becomes lighter, as though a burden has been silently lifted. Such a dream is no fantasy. It is the psyche speaking in the only language. It knows the language of symbol. The dreamer is being told, you are the vessel through which collective sorrow is carried, and your glow is the byproduct of this unbearable but necessary work. The rare empath is not chosen by chance, but is sculpted by fate, by childhoods, marked by sensitivity, by traumas that forced them to feel the emotional truths others denied. In the collective unconscious, we all carry the archetype of the healer, but the empath embodies it differently. While many must consciously seek the healing path, the empath lives it instinctively, often painfully, as though their nervous system were tuned to frequencies others cannot hear. To hear too much is a burden, and yet this burden becomes sacred when it is embraced. The glow is not the sound of their own voice, but the resonance of the whole choir of human suffering vibrating through them. Here lies the mystical danger, because the empath glows, others are drawn to them. People gather like moths to a flame, seeking warmth, seeking light. They will pour their stories, their grief, their rage into the empath's open vessel, believing that somehow the empath can absorb what they cannot bear. And indeed, the empath often does. But without awareness, this absorption becomes possession. The empath can become haunted, carrying fragments of other people's shadows as though they were their own. The glow then flickers, dimmed by exhaustion, poisoned by resentment. This is why the empath's journey must include descent into shadow work. They must learn to discern what is mine and what is not, what belongs to my own unconscious and what is merely visiting from another. Without this discernment, the empath becomes a ghost of themselves, a vessel too full of other people's darkness to remember their own light. It is here that many empaths falter, and it is here that Jungian analysis becomes indispensable, for it offers a map of the psyche where boundaries can be re-established, not by rejection of the other, but by deeper communion with the self. Imagine again the archetype of the lamp in the forest. The lamp is not infinite. Its flame must be guarded. If the empath believes their role is to burn endlessly without tending their own fire, they will extinguish themselves. Yet when they understand that their glow is not meant to replace the light of others, but to remind others of their own, they begin to carry their gift differently. They cease to be consumed and begin instead to radiate sustainably, like a hearth that warms many but is never exhausted, because it is continuously fed by inner renewal. There is something profoundly mystical in this glow. I have often thought of it as a halo of psychic energy, perceptible not only in myth, but in everyday life. Sensitive individuals have told me of meeting a stranger and feeling instantly that the person carried light. This is not fantasy. It is an intuitive perception of psychic resonance. We sense it when someone has made peace with their shadow, when they have become transparent to their own suffering. Their glow is the aura of integration, the sign that they have not repressed their wound, but allowed it to become a window through which light passes. But the empath's glow is also feared, for light not only warms, it reveals. To stand near someone whose presence reflects your own unconscious is to feel seen in ways you may not wish to be seen. Many will avoid the empath for this reason. They cannot tolerate the unmasking that occurs in the empath's gaze. The empath's glow then becomes a lonely light, a flame carried through exile, honored only by those ready to awaken. This loneliness is archetypal as well, for all carriers of light walk a path of separation, a path marked by misunderstanding, Christ bore it, Buddha bore it, the shaman in tribal cultures bore it, and the empath of our modern world bears it still. The glow is rare because the cost is high. Few are willing to feel so deeply, to surrender their defenses, to risk drowning in collective pain. But those who do and survive carry a treasure that cannot be imitated. Their glow is the living proof that the psyche can endure catastrophe and still become more whole, that the soul can be cracked and yet allow more light to pass through the crack. I say to you, if you recognize yourself in these words, do not despise your sensitivity, do not curse the glow that others see, even if you feel it has cost you dearly. Instead, honor it as your soul's vocation. But do not neglect the discipline it demands. Guard your boundaries. Rest in solitude. Return to your own depths so that you do not confuse another's shadow for your own. The glow is a gift only if it is integrated. Otherwise, it becomes a wound that bleeds endlessly. Consider the alchemical image of the vessel heated in fire. The vessel must be strong enough to contain the transformation. Otherwise, it cracks and spills its contents. The empath is such a vessel. Their glow is the gold produced by the alchemical fire of life. But if they do not strengthen their container through self-awareness, boundaries, and communion with their own inner archetypes, then the fire destroys rather than transfigures. Thus, the glow is rare not only because empaths themselves are rare, but because even among empaths, a few complete the alchemical process. Many remain in the stage of dissolution, endlessly overwhelmed, unable to rise into radiance. The true empath who glows has completed the cycle again and again. Each descent into the flood followed by a return to the surface. Their glow is not perfection, but persistence. Not immunity to pain, but repeated resurrection from it. The empath's glow becomes most mysterious when we consider how it participates in the collective dream. Humanity dreams together, though few recognize it. Our myths, our stories, our religions, even the silent symbols that return in countless personal dreams, all of these are the voice of the collective unconscious speaking in chorus. The empath is tuned to this chorus in ways others are not. They often dream not only their own dreams, but fragments of others. They carry visions that seem too large for their individual biography, as though their psyche were porous to the archetypal dramas playing themselves out across generations. I once listened to a patient describe a recurring dream in which they carried a lantern through a ruined city filled with faceless people. These figures approached them, not to speak, but to stand near the glow of the lantern as though seeking warmth. When I asked if the dreamer felt burdened or honored, they replied, both. This is the dual truth of the empath. They are both blessed and burdened, both illuminated and exhausted. Their glow is both a gift to the world and a weight upon their own shoulders. But what is this glow? Psychologically, I would describe it as the psychic radiance of integration. When one accepts the reality of the shadow, not just personally, but collectively. Something of the unconscious flows into consciousness without destroying it. That integration creates presence. Presence is what others feel as glow. It is not charisma, which can be manufactured. It is not charm, which can be learned. Presence cannot be faked. It is the aura of a psyche that has suffered and yet embraced its suffering as part of the whole. This is why false empaths exist. They perform sensitivity. They cloak themselves in language of compassion. But their aura is different. It lacks presence because it has not integrated shadow. It avoids darkness under the guise of light. People may be fooled for a time, but unconsciously they sense the difference. The true empath glows because they have embraced the totality of themselves. The false empath flickers because they seek light without shadow, which is illusion. And yet, the danger for the true empath is that their glow can become a trap. Others project onto them the archetype of savior, of healer, of saint. They are expected to be endlessly available, endlessly glowing, endlessly selfless. Here lies the danger of possession, not by another's emotion, but by an archetype itself. To be possessed by the archetype of the savior is to lose one's individuality, to be consumed by the collective demand for healing. The empath must learn to differentiate between being a vessel for light and being consumed by the role of light bearer. Only then can the glow remain truly theirs, truly human, not a mask of divine expectation. Think of the archetype of the sun. The sun glows without ceasing, but it does so because it is itself, because it burns from within. If the empath tries to imitate the sun by willpower alone, they collapse. But if they realize that their glow comes from their own inner fire, the union of conscious and unconscious, then they burn naturally, without strain. This realization is crucial. The empath's glow is not a performance, but an emanation. It cannot be sustained by effort. It is sustained by authenticity. Dreams, again, reveal this truth. When empaths ignore their limits, they often dream of being drained by vampires, of carrying endless weights, of losing their voice in crowds. These are warnings from the unconscious. You are forgetting yourself in service of others. Conversely, when they honor their own depths, they dream of glowing animals, radiant landscape, or inner companions who carry lamps beside them. The unconscious rewards authenticity with images of companionship, of shared light. The empath's glow also carries a prophetic quality because they are tuned to the collective unconscious. They often sense shifts before others. They feel the tremors of conflict, the unspoken despair beneath a community, the silent hunger for meaning that society denies. Their glow becomes a beacon, not only of comfort, but of warning. They reveal truths others would rather not face. This is why empaths are often both cherished and rejected, loved and feared. They are mirrors of what society suppresses. Their glow exposes and exposure is not always welcome. Yet in this prophetic role lies their deepest gift, for the glow does not merely comfort. It awakens. It tells others, there is more to you than you know. It whispers, you too can integrate your shadow. You too can glow. The empath is not the end of the journey, but its signpost. They remind us of our own path toward wholeness, and so the rare glow of the empath is not for them alone. It belongs to all of us, for it arises from the collective itself. The empath is simply the one who has become transparent enough for the collective light to shine through. Their suffering has thinned the walls of the ego, and in that thinning, the archetypal radiance escapes. That radiance is not personal, it is the eternal glow of the psyche itself. Shining through human fragility, the archetypal journey of the empath is inseparable from the cycle of death and rebirth. Every descent into another's pain feels like a small death. For in that moment, their own ego dissolves, and they become submerged in an alien tide of sorrow. And yet, in returning, in resurfacing, they are reborn with new strengths. This rhythm, death of the old self, rebirth into deeper compassion, is precisely what generates their rare glow. It is not one grand initiation, but countless small ones, endured again and again until the soul itself shines from the polish of repeated abrasion. When ancient cultures spoke of the shaman, they described one who had died and returned, one who had entered the underworld of the unconscious and returned bearing gifts for the tribe. The empath is the modern shaman, though often they do not know it. Their glow is the shaman's fire. Their capacity to carry another's burden is the shaman's medicine. But just as the shaman must learn discipline, ritual, and boundaries to survive the spirits, so too must the empath learn boundaries to survive the archetypes of modern life. For without discipline, they are consumed by the very spirits they seek to heal. The glow, then, is not a sign of permanent illumination. It flickers, waxes, vanishes. There are days when the empath feels emptied, when their lamp has burned too long without fuel. They must retreat into solitude, into silence, into communion with their own depths. Only in the cave of solitude does the lamp refill itself. Dreams often show this truth. The empath may dream of retreating into a temple, of bathing in clear waters, of sitting in darkness until their own inner flame returns. These are instructions from the unconscious, urging them to rest, to renew. Without such renewal, the glow burns out, and the empath becomes another shadow among shadows. And yet, when honored, this glow becomes more than survival. It becomes individuation. For individuation is not merely personal development, it is the process by which the individual becomes whole, by integrating shadow, anima, animus, and the self. The empath's glow is evidence that they have touched the self, that archetypal center which radiates beyond ego. The glow does not arise from the persona, from the mask one wears in society. It arises from the self, which shines through when persona and shadow have both been embraced. Thus, the glow is not merely emotional, it is numinous. It is a brush with the divine within the human. When you stand before a true empath, you are standing before a living symbol. You are standing before someone who embodies the truth that suffering can be transformed, that wounds can become light. They carry this truth not as doctrine, but as presence. Their glow is silent teaching. It whispers without words. You too can survive. You too can integrate. You too can shine. But I must warn you again, the world does not always welcome this glow. The archetypal truth of the empath is disruptive. It unsettles false identities. It exposes collectivities. Just as light casts shadows, so too does the empath's glow draw hostility from those unwilling to face themselves. Many empaths find themselves scapegoated, rejected, or accused of weakness. This rejection is not personal, it is archetypal. The collective resists those who embody what it denies. In Christian myth, Christ was crucified not because he was false, but because he was true. The empath, in a quieter way, endures the same tension, yet the glow persists. It cannot be extinguished by rejection, for it arises from within, from the depths of the unconscious, from the union of opposites. Indeed, rejection may even intensify it, for every wound deepens the channel through which light flows. The empath becomes luminous not because they are spared from pain, but because they allow pain to become transparent. So I say to you, the glow is your birthright, but only if you are willing to descend, to suffer, to integrate. You cannot claim it by wishing, nor protect it by denial. It comes when you embrace your own shadow, when you cease pretending to be whole and begin the work of becoming whole. To glow is to be authentic, to carry your wound openly and yet radiate from it. Imagine yourself in a dream. You walk into a vast cavern, dark and endless. In the center burns a small flame. As you approach, you realize the flame is your own heart. Every sorrow you have carried, every pain you have endured, feeds this fire. You kneel before it, terrified and awed, and then you realize this flame is not only yours. It is connected to every empath who has ever lived, to every soul who has turned pain into light. Together, these flames form an eternal glow, the glow of humanity itself, becoming conscious. This is the rare spiritual glow that only true empaths possess. It is rare, not because others cannot feel, but because few are willing to undergo the crucifixion of sensitivity. It is rare because it demands both descent and ascent, both shadow and light, both death and rebirth. It is rare because it is not performance but transformation, not sentimentality but individuation. If you find this glow in yourself, honor it. Do not hide it out of fear, and do not squander it out of guilt. Let it shine in its own rhythm, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, always authentic. Let it remind others of their own forgotten light. Let it guide you deeper into your own individuation, until the glow is no longer something you carry, but something you are. And if you see this glow in another, do not exploit it. Do not demand from them more than they can give. Instead, recognize it as sacred, as a sign that the unconscious has broken through into consciousness. Sit with them in silence. Allow their glow to remind you of your own depths. For in the end, the glow does not belong to the empath alone. It belongs to the collective, to the archetypal story of the self becoming known through human hearts. This, then, is the mystery. The glow is not a possession, but a participation. It is the soul's reminder that we are more than individuals, that we are part of a greater whole, that through suffering and shadow we can become radiant. The empath is simply the one who has gone first, the one who has borne what others would not, so that all might glimpse the truth, that within the darkest wound lies the brightest flame.